today there are two things I want to cover. One is the email that I sent you all on the exam and how to proceed to complete the exam. Anybody want to share any comments with me or with your peers? Your thoughts? Yes. That's not what I'm referring to yet. We will get to the exam proper, but this has to do with the email that I sent you on hiring tutors, things like this, pumping information out of other people, especially graders. I don't think it's fair to your peers. And if I were in your position, I'd raise my hand and say, yeah, guys, this really isn't cool. Because I'm doing most of the work or all the work myself, and I don't feel it's fair that other people are getting a ride. Do any of you not feel slightest put off? Or are you all okay with this? And that's not a rhetorical question. How many are okay with it? How many are put off by it? How many don't care? Ultimately, there are bigger fish to fry, but all right, it's your game. Please, I'm trying to give you the respect that I think you deserve. Give each other the respect you think they deserve. Okay? Now we can get into the exam proper. Yes. Question. Close. Close. Exactly? Are you nuts? You'd be working on it for a week if you wanted to nail it down exactly. Within a degree or two or three or four, you start pushing 6 to 8, that's getting iffy. What I'm going to be looking for when I grade it is mainly the procedure. Okay? If I see a couple iterations that you tried it, remember there's this cushion, right? Now we're talking about the frequency domain, correct? The frequency domain design. So there's this cushion you have to add. And if you add, say, 5 degrees and then you end up with a phase margin of, it's supposed to be 60, right? Suppose you end up with 54 or 53. Well, then what you want to do is you want to put a bigger cushion and try it again.
So you want us to show?
Well, I want to see the procedure. Yeah, and if you're close enough, like in my solution, what I say, close enough. You call that term close enough, but if you're going to call that term, I need to see not only the procedure exactly as how you did it, but how you would do it again. You don't have to keep doing it, but you can say, I think it's close enough, but if I wanted to get a little closer, here's what I would do. I would do a second iteration with this level of a cushion. Okay? Is that enough? Other questions? How are you handling the root locus design problem? It's a little tricky doing the root locus, and you can do that one by trial and error too, except that a little bit of thoughtful trial and error could save you a huge amount of time. Let's go to that problem specifically. Hey, does anybody know, I'm going to go to this thing now and ask for your help on this. How do I get rid of this crap? I don't want that side window tonguey stuff. It just popped up in my Microsoft Word 10. And it's a real pain. I thought I could shift this thing over and get rid of it. No, you can't get rid of it. How can I get rid of it? Oh, no. Yeah, that's for comments. Thanks very much, Mr. Ziegler. I never would have thought of that.
It's probably something in your View tab.
Yeah, it is in the View tab.
Can you uncheck something?
Well, that's what I tried to do.
List on the click View tab.
Yeah.
And then do list on the right next to details. Yeah.
Unclick
no, it still has
details.
Exactly.
Unclick details.
Unclick details.
It automatically.
Thank you very much. But now I actually want to know when the dates on these things. This is how it used to be. This is how it was until like 2 nights ago. I would have the date and when it was modified and what the size of the file was, but it was all in one line. It didn't have this stupid second pane opening up. So I want my list, right? Yeah. Details? That's it. Alrighty then. This is super, super, super. Thank you very much. Let's go to whole class. Let's just do a little psychoanalysis of that design problem in the root locus full placement. It's part C of problem 2, right? Okay, now you have a plant, and this is the only plant, nothing but the plant, which is 120 over SS plus 1. The antenna doesn't exist, right?
For the whole problem.
For the whole exam.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't exist. I told you why I put it there. So this is the plant. The plant is 120 over SS plus 1. And now you want a controller. Well, it's got a gain, and obviously you're using the root locus design method. You're going to have to find that gain with your root locus, right? So it's a standard root locus design problem, but what is one of the specs? That controller needs to cancel the pole at -1. Now, I shouldn't be telling you this because I am actually getting into the solution, but am I really giving anything away here? What does this have to have in it? Does everybody see that? So I'm not giving you an answer. You already saw that. And you're ready to fall asleep because it's so boring and I'm almost insulting your intelligence? Good. But it's a lead controller. So it's got to have this in it. That's plus something else. Correct? Now, what do you have for the open loop? So what the open loop then becomes is this. Doesn't it? Didn't that cancel that? All right. Okay. There's the form of the open loop. Could anybody do a root locus of that thing, do you think? Where are the zeros? There aren't any. Where are the poles? 0 and negative beta. All right. Now, what's one of the specifications? So, first of all, what is this root locus going to look like? This is a basic root locus plotting question now. Right? What is the root locus with these x's going to look like? Do you all see this? What's that value? You proved what it is. What is it? Why is it beta over 2? because you have to have an isosceles triangle to match the angle requirement. Right? If this is on the bisector, we did this a number of times, you did it in your homework. So this is the general form of the root locus that you're going to be using for your design problem. As you increase k, right? Okay? As you increase k, the two closed loop roots are going to do this, correct? Got it? Everybody? Now, what's one of the other specs? There's a steady state error spec, but there's another spec. Can you read? What is it? All right, I'll pull it up and highlight it for you.
Now in the school.
No, I don't want to do 20. That's good enough, right? Now, what does it mean? This is rhetorical. What does it mean that a time constant has to be smaller than 0.2? It means 1 over, negative 1 over the time constant has to be bigger than something. Right? Remember, the real parts of the roots are negative 1 over the time constant. So when you're saying that I want all taus to be smaller than 0.2, you're saying I want all my roots to be to the left of some value. Now what happens if this line here that you've chosen is over here? Can you ever achieve that? You can never achieve it. This one will be to the left until it hits the line. This one will always be to the right. All right? So you need to ask yourself, how does that 0.2 times second? Remember, we have all these lines for roots. This is constant zeta. This is constant omega d. This is constant tau. Remember all of those that relate roots to time constants and damping ratios? You want a line of constant tau. So you pick a border, right? Less than or equal to 0.2 seconds. Choose it to be 0.2 seconds. Don't push the envelope. So you've got a line there that is guiding your design. All right? So if this line is way over here, then as k increases pretty quickly, this guy's going to race beyond it, and beyond that point, both roots, they're there. You're done. Correct? You've satisfied that tau. The problem is to put that 0.2 over here means you have to have a beta way the heck out there, and that's a big beta. That means you have a very high bandwidth system. That means the control power that you... Remember what this control thing looks like? All right? This control thing has a Bode plot. And the bigger... This is the break frequency of the denominator. And the bigger that break frequency is, the broader the bandwidth that the controller is. And so if you have a really broad bandwidth control, you're going to pay. Literally. You're going to pay lots of money for that sucker. You get by with the bandwidth you need. You get by with the smallest beta that you can get by with. Because that'll minimize the control power for this thing. So the question then becomes, where do I choose beta? As I said, if I choose beta way out at minus 100, if beta is 100, sure, everything's going to work fine. And I'm going to have one extremely expensive controller. So figure it out from there. It's a subtle point. I haven't given you this design problem in the homework. That's why I thought it'd be fair to bring this up to you so you could think a little more thoughtfully about how to choose a beta value. And then see if it works. Choose a beta value, do the root locus, drag your data cursor to find the k that satisfies the steady state error, right? Which is going to depend on both beta and k, isn't it? Why does the steady state error depend on both the controller gain and beta? Because k sub v for this unity feedback system, k sub v is the limit as s goes to 0 of s, because it's type 1, s times g of s. Well, here's g of s, and when you let s cancel that s and you let s go to 0, what do you get? Come on, what do you get when you get rid of this and let s go to 0? It's a function of both k and beta. So what you do is you choose a reasonable beta. You then use your root locus cursor to get the k. You're going to have this number. This is going to be a number. Because that's related to the steady state error property. You're going to get a number for this. You choose a number for beta. Then you say, okay, does the k value that I have to get this satisfy those specs? Got it? I'm saying it loosely because I don't want to do the problem for you, but it is different enough of a problem that you can do it iteratively. I've got a couple emails to people saying, can I do it by trial and error? And the answer is, sure, it almost has to be by trial and error, but not random trial and error, where you just grab a beta and you grab an intelligent beta. Grab a beta that'll minimize the time constant specification. Okay? And then, as I said, for that beta, now it's just a root locus, isn't it? Once you have this number, you can do the root locus of the open loop, or for the open loop to get the closed loop roots, right? Then you take your data cursor and you drag it along the locus. And you drag it up till you find that k value that you need here to satisfy that steady state error spec. And if the k value that you need to satisfy this also happens to satisfy your damping ratio and any other specifications, you did it. And if it didn't, try a little different beta. But it shouldn't take many, if any, iterations to do this, if you do it intelligently. Any questions on that one? It's a little tricky, but I didn't mean it to be tricky. I'm kind of admitting that I wasn't thinking carefully enough, that it really was a little tricky, and so I'm giving you a little help to make it less tricky. The main thing goes back to here. Lines of constant time. Right? That's what it's all about here. It's lines of constant time. Any other questions on the exam? You do have, you saw the extension date, I'm sure. It was motivated by a couple students who came up after class and appealed to me, and I said I would think about it, and then when I posed the question to the 3 p.m. class, it was unanimous. And so the due date is next Wednesday, but there will be a homework assignment posted Monday, because we have to keep moving ahead. Yes?
So for problem 3C,
Yep.
so it's asking for the flow-through error response to the ICBM input.
Yep.
So do we have, so what exactly is the ICBM input here? Do we have to
It's right
include
there.
the antenna
That's,
as well?
no, the input is, right, that picture. That's the input.
So we need to use the ICBM as a file that was
Yeah.
given? Okay.
Yeah, that'll be your input, and you use LSIM to get your output, and then you subtract the output from the input, and you get the error. Any other questions? Nada? Nix? Yet? Nope. Yes.
So for that problem, did you want us
input. No, I just want you to plot the error. Just the error. Yep. You can plot the input and the output, but you won't see the error because they'll be really banded close to each other. So all you need to do versus time is plot the error versus time. Yes?
For question 1B.
Okay.
I guess I'm just a little confused. Is the answer supposed to be like an actual number or like a function?
That's a number. Yep. The steady state yaw rate for a rudder angle of 10 degrees, a step rudder of 10. Okay. That's why it's only 3 points. Any other questions? We okay to go? Get into the current material? State space? I see a half a hand there. Oh, never mind. Alrighty then, let's move ahead. Before we get to the hardcore state space controller canonical form, I wanted to give you a little more motivation. I tried to give you some motivation last time for state space. And here's a couple different motivations now. Let's see, where are we at here? Spring, let's go to 16. Let's go to, is it lectures? This is a dynamical system. Now, this is where bandwidth comes in. Because if I have a really high bandwidth here, that can be a bad thing. So what you have to look at is how is the program analyzing the angle of the hit. If I hit the ball toward the top, it goes up. Right? If you hit it right at the corner of the ball, I'm going to try to... Oh. Ooh. Yeah. See that? It goes up. So this is actually the hardest one with this thing. Oh! Tit for tat. You didn't count mine, I don't know. Yeah. So the idea here is that if it hit, how would you program this? The ball is given an initial condition, right? Look at that stuff. That's pretty cool.
Just camping.
So what it's given is you're measuring the angle. The ball has a trajectory, right? And when the ball hits the paddle, it's got an angle and it's got a velocity. So what happens is it uses your EM345 to compute the reflection angle, but it's not quite that simple because if you notice, these paddles are flat. So whether I hit it up here, here, or here, the angle of reflection is the same. It's a flat paddle. However, the program says, no, you meant to hit it toward the edge so you could get the angle to change. And so what you're actually seeing is when it hits right toward the edge of the paddle, boy, am I doing good. Look at that stuff. So this is a very interesting state space design problem because you've got, what would the states be? It would be the ball's velocity and angle of impact, right? Okay. And so you have to write a code. Ooh, he's a little nervous.
Yeah.
He's shaking in his boots. Look at that. I didn't even have to hit it. I just let the wall do it.
Oh no.
Oh yeah, it doesn't matter. See, it's good. What kind of game is this? You see, it didn't hit the corner, but it went up. And that's where you got the stakes. It doesn't matter, you guys. You're getting too worried. This is a rigged game. Yeah?
Oh no.
Oh, no. So what are you concluding here? If it only hits in the middle, you get a point? Because if it hits out here, you don't?
It's a goal.
Here, the goal.
It's like soccer.
Oh, so for the most part, all I have to do is pretty much what I did, which is just keep it in the middle. That's not going to hit it. Yeah. See? Yeah. He's so nervous he can't help himself.
Is it measuring the ball's velocity down there?
Yeah. Yep. So it's a pretty interesting dynamical system that you could program. The reason I went and searched for these is I was going to, remember I did Oh, did I miss it? Can we put it on instant replay or have a referee call?
Throw the challenge flag.
Alrighty. The reason I did this is because this is an example, yet another example of what you guys as entrepreneurs can do if you want to create something. Remember, I did it last time with the audio questions, where you randomize questions. Now, this is not a real party game, I'm sorry. Maybe for you people, because you're so young and innocent, just like slapping the ball back and forth. But I get bored out of my mind real quick with this. Whereas if it were that audio one, where you have all, and you start putting, each person contributes, say, 5 really sleazy, sick, psychotic phrases, and then you put all these together and you start randomly connecting them, that would have me on the floor now. Sorry. So there's a lot of stuff that you can do in MATLAB that takes advantage not just of MATLAB, but of this course. So this is, the website for this is, let's go to the folder. Oh, actually, it says it right at the top here. You go to the function. It doesn't say it. I'll post the folder for this. He's got a whole bunch of games that he wrote, like Minesweeper. Tic-tac-toe is another one of those games that not a good party game.
Herman, we have an exam to do, and you're showing us all this fun stuff. Where's my motivation going to be this weekend?
You may think this is distraction. It is distraction. It's what I call positive feedback. I get you excited about the material. I get you to wake up and not fall asleep, so that when I go to this material, the next item, you won't as easily fall asleep. Not that one. That one you'd fall asleep on.
Click right if you click.
Ah, there it is. Except that one's not there anymore.
Storm the beast.
All right, example of a MIMO system. I haven't had time to post this, but this is a complex, and an example of a complex dynamical system, and it's in relation to education, which I thought may be mildly related to why you guys are here. I don't know. All right, and it was stimulated by a Palermo. He's a professor out at Berkeley. It's called Starving the Beast, but what it does, it's actually a documentary that won a Best Film at a recent film festival. And so I thought I'd use it to see how we could begin to model education. higher education. What does higher education have to do with aerospace engineering? There may well be some of you that complain to the chair or the dean of the college saying, I went in this course to learn about airplanes, and all he taught me about was education and falling. So it's related to education because you guys are in education. Okay, so here's the model. The state space equation is x dot is ax plus bu. The output, these are just definitions. The output equation is this. The output variable y is going to be m-dimensional. We don't know what m is yet. There are a lot of outputs. Can be a lot of inputs. Inputs are p-dimensional. The state variable is n-dimensional. So let's begin to see how we would arrive at a dynamical model for education. So let's first of all figure out what the dimensions of the A, B, C, and D matrices have to be. Because you have to get dimensional consistency here. And I gave you a start. Since x dot equals ax, and both x and x dot are n-dimensional, then A has to be n by n. You see that? This is n-dimensional. This is n-dimensional. This must be n by n. Okay. This is n-dimensional. This is p-dimensional. What must p be? How many columns must p have? Remember, you're doing row column multiplication. How many columns must it have? What's the dimension of u? Don't look at me. What's the dimension of u? Of u or u? What's your dimension? It's like, oh, I don't know about this. It's p. We got p inputs, whatever p is. B times u has to have n dimensions. How many columns must B have? Think rows. Rows are the number of columns, aren't they? This U has, let's say U has 4 elements in it, right? U1, U2, U3, U4. And now I've got the B. Well, the B must have 4 rows or 4 columns in it because I have to do row column multiplication. I got to take these 4 times these 4 and add them. Then for the second row, I have to take these 4. And for the third row, and for the nth row. So P has to be n rows by P columns. So we'll put that in here. No, I won't, because then I got to change it to my 3 o'clock section. And I'm lazy today. What's the dimension of C? Well, n, remember the dimension of x is n, so C has to have n columns to do the row column multiplication on x. So C has n columns, but y has what dimension? M. So it has to be m by n. So this is, you got to get your dimensions on all of these things down, just so that if you get a MATLAB mistake and it says dimensional inconsistency, you can go back and say, okay, I know B should have been a 3 by 5. Oh, it's a 5 by 3. I must have screwed up my row columns. So you can easily find out what problems that you have. So now that we've got the dimension thing addressed, and it's a small thing, but a big thing, let's identify 4 major outputs of higher education at a public university. And I left this blank because I want you people to give me 4 major outputs related to education at a public university. None? You have no desired outputs of this education. Job, sports. All right, let's say income. Let's say your income. That's a desired output, right? So we can say income and by the way, all of these are functions of time, aren't they? This is a dynamical system. So it's income over time. What's another one? For those less monetarily inclined. Who are you talking to?
Idealism.
Come on. Are there any idealists? Nobody cares about the social good of the society? Really? How about inquiry? Into social welfare. No. That doesn't relate to that. Welfare of society and justice. This is one factor that bean counters almost never account for in the cost of education. But the Scandinavian countries, it's central. They look at their investment in education as a big plus for the social stability of the country. Because if you've got people who are at higher levels of living, there's less disparity, and people get along, it seems. They get along better. So there are these measures, but bean counters in the States oftentimes don't look at those measures. They don't count. So, being the socialist that I am, come from a long line. That's another. What's another one? Another important output that you think education should be measuring.
Knowledge or understanding that
How about we say the learning process? Because it's simply because remember this. You could say understanding, but it's a function of time. Whereas if you say the learning process, then that process, understanding is it going to go up or is it going to go down? Well, your understanding of this course is not going to go up with time. What's going to happen is your ability to learn from this course, should you get a job that puts you in a situation that you need this material, you'll be able to learn more. So your learning ability, for example. And let's just leave it at 3 because we've played too much Pong here. All right, so those are a couple of outputs. Okay, now let's identify some major input variables. And by the way, this thing talks about this in a very critical framework. So if you have a bent toward broad-minded, progressive education, you might be interested in this. If you're not, just throw it away. What about some inputs? Oh, that should have been you. Notice I copied and pasted, but it didn't work. What about you one? Time? Time expended on the education? What are inputs to education? What are the inputs coming into this university, this process of education? What are the things that drive it? Not what's in it. Those are the state variables. How much you're learning, how much you're expanding your views, and all these things, those are state variables. But what are the elements or the variables that actually drive education? Money.
Standards.
Tuition. Cost of education is a major input to education. As cost goes up, education possibilities go down. So we could say one of these U1 is tuition. Any others? That would be one of the variables, time spent in education, unless you were saying time spent on pre-university education. That could be one. Your level of education, the quality of education you had prior to coming into the university, that would be an input to your educational experience, right? Some people who maybe were taught at home, homeschooled and stuff, wouldn't have the same backgrounds as many other people. So you could say U2 is pre-education, pre-ed, background of some one sort or another. So there are a number of inputs to this thing, and there are lots of them. And then we have state variables. And the state variables are what are the variables that are involved in the process of your education. GPA. This is a measure of learning. GPA. Psychological well-being. And you may laugh at that, but there's a lot of people who get really emotionally and psychologically pushed to the limit. You don't have any friends at MIT? You're lucky. I mean, Iowa State is a high-stress university, but I know people at MIT and Stanford, and I think it's ugly the way the students are treated there. It's absolutely cutthroat the way the students are treated there. And so I think there are many, many state variables in terms of how much you learn, the GPA, the psychological well-being, the enrollment is a social factor, isn't it? How much enrollment? Enrollment is part of the educational system, isn't it? You got high enrollments, low enrollments. So what I did is I wanted to give you a flavor, not just for the dimensional consistency thing, but that there are lots of inputs, outputs, and variables here. It's a really complicated dynamical system. So how would you build a model for this system? You start digging. What I decided to do was just keep it simple, so I decided to see how much data is there out there that relates tuition, which is an input variable, cost of education, that's an input. And one of the states is the number of students enrolled in the educational institution. So I decided, okay, if I want to find a dynamical relationship or a transfer function between input U1 and enrollment X3, what would I do? Well, I'd go out and find out data that relates U1 to X3. So I did. And here's some data from the Treasury Department that shows with time. Here's for public four-year institutions what the cost of tuition is. And here's the enrollment in public 4 years. Actually, that's in all, but it's similar. So what you could do with this, if you have, and this is just one data set. What you can do with two time data sets, you've got a U of t here, you've got an x of t here. I want to get a transfer function between u and x. How would I do that? How would I get a frequency response function between u and x? What is the definition of a frequency response function? It's the Fourier transform of the output over the Fourier transform of the input. Those x of I omega, that's called the Fourier transform. It's not the Laplace transform, it's called the Fourier transform of x of t. So what you could do is you could take the Fourier transform of this with MATLAB's FFT command. Gives you the Fourier transform. Take the Fourier transform of this, divide this by this, and say that's my estimate of the frequency response function. So now you get a frequency response function that may look like this. It's not going to look real pretty because these are not ideal kind of simple signals or processes. But what would you do with this? You might say, well, first order model, a little bit of a peak here. Seems like it's got, I don't know, 40, 60 dB per decade roll off there. So I start picking my corner frequencies. Remember these straight line approximations? By the way, a straight line approximation, if you give me magnitudes that look like this, this gets back to the homework. What is the straight line approximation Bode plot? I won't tell you what it is because we're in exam period. I'll tell you what it's not. It's not this. Sorry. That's connecting the dots. That is not a formal straight line approximation. Go back to the book and read about Bode-Plot straight line approximations if you have to. But don't put that. So what you could do is you could actually look at that Fourier transform ratio and come up with a transfer function between that input and that output. And then you could do this for all combinations of inputs and outputs, right? This gets to be huge. This is multiple PhDs right here. It's a big problem, but it's a very important problem. And that's why this is very much aerospace. You guys have the most complicated systems of all the colleges and departments in the College of Engineering. Bar none. I've taught in Doubly, I've taught in ME, I've taught in Aero, and I can tell you right now, you guys start with the complicated system. They start with transistors and resistors and springs and masses. No, you start with a freaking whole airplane. And so that makes it a systems problem from day one. So good luck to you. All right. I'm going to stop here, but I'll post these things. And we'll talk to you guys on Monday. Have a good holiday weekend.